So now let's go on to the laws we find it today. City of Oroville versus Superior Court. I'll read briefly. I'll read the quote that you see in front of you in a minute, but if you could just listen to the facts of this case, and then I think the quote will be important and you'll understand it easier. So on August 15th of this year, the Supreme Court handed out the first decision of inverse condemnation in over 20 years. This is a big deal. I mean, this is hot off the press. Like I said, I don't even think it's been 45 days since this case was handed out. And so my prediction is going to be a very important case, and it's not really a case favorable for plaintiffs. So what are the facts of the case? Facts of the case were a group of dentists sued the city of Oroville when sewage came through the city pipes and damaged their offices. So pretty nasty affair. The dentist sued the city in inverse condemnation. The city came back and said, fellas, no, you should have installed a backwater valve. If you would have done that, it would have prevented the sewage. Okay? You didn't do what you needed to do. Trial court and the appellate court said, no, inverse condemnation. Okay? Clear inverse condemnation, no questions asked. The city appealed it to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court reversed and said, no inverse condemnation. So what the Supreme Court held in that case, and this is important, was that inverse condemnation is only successful when the property owner, right, shows property damage, and I quote, was a probable result or necessary effect of an inherent risk associated with the design, construction, or maintenance of the public improvement. Okay. So what did the court focus on that case? We'll talk about that, then we'll read this quote. What the court focused on was causation. Okay? Really hit home on causation. They talked about, which I found very interesting, and we'll speak about this near the end, the increased cost to the government for inverse condemnation cases. They focused also on the dentist's actions and also on the city's actions, which the court found to be reasonable. All right? So, let's look at this quote. The quote, and I find this to be the most important quote of the case, and if anyone has any interest whatsoever in inverse condemnation, read this case. I mean, look at the other cases we talked about, but you have to read this case through. So, excuse me, a court assessing inverse condemnation liability, remember we talked about a lot of these things are legal issues. I think this is what the court's speaking at here. Must find more, that's my emphasis, than just a causal connection between the public improvement and the damage to private property. So stop right there. To me, what that means is strict liability analysis, that's not good, right? You need something more than that. Continuing on, what we hold is that the damage to private property must be, my emphasis, substantially caused by an inherent risk presented by the deliberate design, construction, or maintenance of the public improvement. Okay, so what's going on here? Well, my understanding is this, is that the takeaway of this case is that what you see is a move away from the strict liability analysis that was illustrated in the earlier cases to more of the reasonable analysis that you see in Belair and Laughlin in a flood control context. But now we're outside of a flood control context, right? So if you think about what we just talked about, this case, I would say factually, is very similar to what you saw in McMahon's and Pacific Bell, right? But what you see here is the court saying, look, now we're going on to, we're getting away from this strict liability analysis, and we're moving toward this reasonableness analysis that was announced in Belair and Laughlin, and arguably limited to the flood control context.